And right now, we are 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day. Romaine Bostick alongside Alix Steel. We're counting you down to the closing bell. And here to help take us beyond the bell, it's a global simulcast, joined now by Scarlet Fu here in the TV studio, in the radio booth, Massar and Tim Stenovec, as we parse all the crucial moments of the day. But who are we kidding? We're really going to parse the crucial moments that come after the bell. And that includes some big earnings, Carol, out of VF Corp, Elf Beauty, and Snowflake.
Yeah, exactly, man. Those are so important. And then there's this other one we might get to if we have time. NVIDIA.
Oh, I've heard of them.
Yeah, exactly. Listen, the expectations are high. We're going to see, we've had all these stories about that. There isn't enough supply to meet demand. The numbers, the metrics, the margins, this is going to be important. And the outlook, we were talking to our own Ian King, that's going to be important.
Okay, the outlook, the revenue estimate, $26.82 billion. This is the one that I'm focused on. Adjusted gross margin estimate. Scarlett, 75.6%.
Yeah, that's something.
That is just incredible. Yeah.
Ian shared with us, we asked for context around that number. He shared with us, for context, at the peak of Intel, when it owned the entire server market, it was in the 60%. In the 60s.
Low 60s, right?
Low 60s.
Yeah, that is just remarkable.
Incredible.
I wonder if that changes when Blackwell really comes into its own. Let's not forget, too, that the Fed is part of the trading day today because it's rare that Fed minutes actually move the market. But I feel like we've been in a holding pattern for so long now, basically a week, waiting for NVIDIA. But we've been keying off Fed speak and the Fed minutes out of sheer boredom.
Yep. Many question whether policy was restricted enough. I think that tells you a lot.
All right, we get the closing bells here in New York on this Wednesday afternoon. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, the S&P and the NASDAQ all in the red here on the day, with the Dow down more than 200 points or about 0.5%. The S&P lower by about 14 points or so, or roughly about 0.25 percentage point. The NASDAQ down 31 points or 0.2%. The Russell also in the red here on the day, and that is your biggest laggard, at least among the big indexes, down about 0.8%.
All right, guys, just going to draw your attention to one sector. Solar stocks, man, they were just soaring in today's session. The Invesco Solar ETF up about 9% in today's session. UBS, a positive note today. New tariffs on Chinese solar panels and surging power demand. Overall, Scarlett, definitely playing into that factor. I'm going to have one of those among my gainers today.
Yeah, the ticker is the best, right? TAN.
Yep.
It just, whoever invented that, genius. Okay, let's take a look at the sector performances there. There is a lot of green on that pie, but that's mainly because the tech sector finished barely higher, up 0.1%. In fact, only 3 sectors finishing in the green: healthcare, industrials, and tech, but just barely. Your big laggards are energy, utilities, and materials, off by at least 1%.
All right, guys, we did get some retail. We are in the midst of retail earnings. TJX companies, way off its highs of the session when it was up more than 7%, but finishing the day with about a 3.5% gain. Did hit a record high, though. It boosted its earnings per share forecast for the full year. First quarter results better than many expected. That was according to Citi, but nonetheless, investors like that one. BuzzFeed, thank you, Tim. He said you got to do this one. Up 82% at its highs, finishing the day with a 20% gain. Mind you, it is a $3 stock, so any little dollar move or money move can be a lot percentage-wise. Soaring, though, after the entrepreneur and former U.S. presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy reported a stake in the company. Asked for talks with the board. His stake, 7.7% in BuzzFeed, worth about $6.8 million based on yesterday's closing price. So we have to finish and do some math. But nonetheless, this would make him the 4th largest shareholder in BuzzFeed. So that was kind of an interesting story play. It is a $3.01 stock. For solar, I said solar outperformer. This is your number one gainer in the S&P 500 today, finishing up almost 19%. Yesterday, UBS raising its price target to 270 from 252. Stock closed just under 252 today. So there's optimism. There's some major macro efforts certainly going underway that are helping out some of the solar name. And I had to mention Moderna because this was a top performer in both the S&P and NASDAQ 100. More momentum in this name, finishing today with a gain of almost 14%. It's up something like 60% year to date, on track for, I think, a record streak of gains, which might have been today. I think it might be 8 in a row here. But nonetheless, they did announce some data that they're going to present at the 2024 ASCO. But I couldn't find any really other specific mover. But nonetheless, a lot of momentum on this play.
All right, you got the gainers, Carol. I'm going to go to the decliners. I do want to start with Target to look at the retail space. We got earnings from the company this morning. Shares tumbling the most going back to November of 2022, falling 8% today. This after the company came out and they kind of sounded this note of caution when it came to discretionary spending in the coming months and with regard to its turnaround effort. Comp sales fell for the fourth consecutive quarter and declined 3.7% for the quarter through early May. That was in line with what Wall Street was estimating. Digital sales did help to moderate the drop, while brick and mortar comp store sales missed forecasts as attributed to a decline in traffic. Also, did you see what happened to shares of Lululemon, falling today by more than 7%? Shares are actually down more than 41% so far this year. They hit a 52-week low today, although they're the lowest since going back to March of 2023. This all because the company said its chief product officer, Sun Cho, was leaving, raised concerns among analysts that the athleisure brand was losing its edge. She will not actually be replaced. It's part of a bigger organizational reorg. Her responsibilities for product design are going to move to the company's global creative director. This according to a statement from Lululemon. And then for an honorable mention, NVIDIA shares. I do want to take a look at how they finished the day, down about half a percentage point. They are higher by 91% so far this year. Really, it's just an excuse for me to talk about them ahead of earnings. Watching the most important number, the second quarter outlook, that revenue number, $26.82 billion, and then adjusted operating expenses estimate of $2.64 billion, adjusted gross margin estimate of $75.6 billion. The revenue estimate for the year should be, according to analyst estimates, about $113.83 billion. Those numbers expected around 4:20 Wall Street time.
That's a lot of money. It's fair to say.
It's so much money.
Making a lot of money.
It's near records right now, up 91% so far this year,
yeah.
Alex.
I'm taking a look at the bond market because it did actually move, particularly on the front end. We're seeing some selling yields up by about 4 basis points, a touch of buying coming in the back end. You did have a 20-year auction that went well despite any sort of rally into the numbers. And then you also had the Fed minutes. Many questioned whether policy was restricted enough, and various were willing to tighten more if need be. Plus, David Solomon of Goldman Sachs saying at Boston College that he doesn't see that the data is that compelling that we're going to have to cut rates. So the higher for longer narrative, but then taking a little bit a step further here. Like if policy is not restrictive, kind of then what?
All right, everybody, and we do have some earnings, it looks like, just crossing the Bloomberg terminal. Let me just pull it up on the terminal. We're talking about Snowflake just crossing first quarter adjusted diluted EPS. We're looking at 14 cents a share, so that's a nickel shy of the street estimate of 19 cents a share. But what's interesting, let's go to the outlook, because it says it sees second quarter product revenue, $805 million to $810 million. That is above street estimates of $787.5 million. And Romaine, we are already seeing this name popping in the aftermarket. It's up about 12%, down about 18% year to date. But again, another one of those software companies, but nonetheless, investors liking what they're seeing
and
on that outlook.
Yeah, absolutely. And a software company, we should point out, that has benefited from AI when you talk about just kind of the reimagining of these data centers, and they've been integral to that. It's kind of one of those kind of second-tier AI names that doesn't get talked about much, but we'll see. I mean, I want to dig a little bit deeper into the release to see how much, if at all, they're touting that.
All right, let's take a look at another company that just reported. We know it's the tail end of earnings season, so retailers are out in force. Here is an apparel and footwear company, VF Corp, right now. In terms of fourth quarter revenue, $2.37 billion, missing the mark here. Analysts were looking for $2.41 billion. So revenue missing analyst estimates. 2025 revenue seen growing 10%. I don't have a comparable, so we don't know if that's good or bad right off the bat. But right now, the initial read from investors is to push the stock down by 2.7%. This is not exactly a super liquid stock, so hard to say that we can read too much into it.
Big short, too.
And just for you know, prosperity here, it's North Face, it's Vans, it's these kind of names. They're also in the middle of a restructuring,
the teenage boys brand
in the U.S.
Well, I think it's interesting. I mean, I'm glad you brought up those brands because I was looking through them. I mean, with the exception of North Face, I mean, they all had pretty significant declines in a year. I mean, 25% drop in Vans on their revenue side, 14 on Timberland, 15 on Dickies, and the North Face was up, but that was only by what, 1% or 2%?
That's barely up.
Yeah, well, brand direct-to-consumer up 6%, but the North Face was down 5% with ongoing U.S. wholesale weakness. Vans down 26%. Largely consistent with the prior quarter, includes additional impact from deliberate actions to further right-size inventories in the wholesale channel, i.e. Put stuff on sale to get rid of the inventories that they have on back.
One other company I want to highlight here, guys, is Elf Beauty. That stock just getting creamed in post-market. We're looking at earnings that on a earnings adjusted per share basis came in above estimates, but their net sales also did. But it's really about their outlook. Their 2025 adjusted outlook came in below estimates, whether you're looking at revenue, whether you're looking at earnings or adjusted EBITDA. So they're missing for this year. This goes against my whole invest in your face thing. I guess invest in your face has struggles also.
I don't know. How's Sephora doing? I don't know.
I mean, maybe we're not shopping at Elf Beauty, but anyway, that's not getting hit pretty hard.
All right. Right now, NVIDIA just up a hair in the aftermarket ahead of its earnings, just up about 0.2%. So we'll be breaking all of those numbers down in about 10 minutes time, I know, on both sides. That's a wrap, guys. Our cross-platform coverage, radio, TV, YouTube, Bloomberg Originals, Beyond the Bell. We'll see you again, same time, same place tomorrow.